We'll call the meeting to order. I'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I invite you to join us. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Kolpak? Here. Pepcorn?
Here.
Preston? Here. Strand?
Here.
Mahoney?
Here. Health. Fargo County Public Health Spring Social is April 30th from 5 to 6:30 p.m. That is tomorrow. The community is invited to attend to visit about all things public health and hear a message from Health Officer Dr. Tracy Newman. You will also be able to say goodbye to Desi Fleming, who will be in attendance since she is going to retire. So we suggest you greet her and say goodbye. More information is the Health Department's Facebook page. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, a time to increase awareness about the vital role mental health plays in a person's overall health and well-being. To support this effort, Fargo Cast Public Health offers Credible Mind, a free online platform dedicated to supporting and promoting mental health that features podcasts, videos, articles, and assessments. Visit fargopastpublichealth.com to get started. The library. Teams are invited to sign up to the Stress Less Kit during the week of May 12th to help with stressors at this time of year. Each free kit contains tools and tips for stress management, including breathing exercise, stress balls, and more. Registration is required on the library's website, and kits will be available to pick up at each library location. The 5th Annual Northern Focus Photography Project is up and coming for recreational photographers who will be accepting entries through May 31st. Guidelines, rules, and information are all available through the library's website. One lucky artist will get their photograph on the cover of Northern Narratives 2024. And finally, the annual cleanup week begins next Monday, May 6th. And again, this year will be a 2-week event with pickup happening on your recycling day. We have a short video with a reminder of some of the rules to ensure we have another successful cleanup week in Fargo.
The annual cleanup week is almost here. This year, it will take place during the weeks of May 6th and the 13th, and like last year, will follow the recycling collection schedule. The week of May 6th is the A week, and the week of May 13th is the B week. Debris should be placed out on the boulevard before 7 a.m. on your pickup day. Please don't place out items multiple days in advance, as damage from weather can make your items difficult to pick up. The rules are the same this year as in past years. There are items that you can leave out. Please separate items of the same type into distinct piles as separate trucks collect the different items. For more information, please visit cleanupweek.com.
Is there a motion to approve the order of agenda moving item 5 from the consent agenda to the regular agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carried. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the April 15, 2024 regular meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion or changes? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda items 1 through 36, excluding item number 5, which is moved to the regular agenda?
So moved.
Strand, is there a second?
Second.
Kolpak. Any discussion or changes? Roll call vote, please.
Strand?
Yes.
Kolpak? Aye. Pepcorn?
Aye.
Preston?
Aye.
Yes. President comments. Would remind people to keep to the issues you want to talk about. Look at the rules that are up here. When speaking, be sure to address the issue, not the person. So when you're visiting, sometimes people start to bring in different commissioners, and different people would prefer that when you make your speeches, you talk about the issue and keep away from names and people that are on the commission or at the mayor. Our first speaker is Prairie Johnson, virtual. Prairie?
The marker telling me.
Are you there?
Hello, I'm here.
You may start.
Hey, commissioners. Howard Zinn is an American historian, political science professor, and a World War II vet. He said, they'll say we're disturbing the peace, but there is no peace. What really bothers them is that we're disturbing the war. We must take a stand. You must speak with us and speak for us until it is proven that Israel stops their war crimes. Removing U.S. military assistance is imperative. We do not consent to our taxes being sent to fund crimes against humanity and the planet. We want our taxes to help house people, to help feed people in our community, not to destroy homes, universities, churches, and mosques elsewhere, not to starve millions of people who are undergoing Israeli bombardment. People are finding mass graves now. People are being executed with their hands tied behind their back, according to Amnesty International. This should shake anyone with a conscience. Together we can make a world that we all want to live in. Selling weapons and giving the working people's dollars to foreign governments is the opposite of making our community a better place. People like to say the youth will save us. They are our futures. I've heard you discredit and condescend the youth, the elders, the clergy, the doctors, and the working class. Our own FM interfaith group put out a call for a ceasefire. Who do you serve? Shadow opposition? That is not democracy. The people plead with you to educate yourselves on what is causing us harm, to speak for us when officials elsewhere do their bidding against the majority while taking donations from weapons manufacturers and foreign interest lobbies. That's also not democracy. I would ask you to care about our mental health this month. The Human Rights Commission has unanimously passed 2 ceasefire resolutions, one of which was at the request of yourselves. They have committed to hearing the diverse community that has come before you all. Will you commit to hearing them, to work with them? Let Fargo speak, but let Fargo also be heard. We ask you to do better. The space to do better is here and now. You are capable. Free Palestine.
In person, Cody Schuler.
Good evening. My name is Cody Schuler, he, him pronouns, and I am a resident of the city of Fargo, as well as representing the ACLU of North Dakota. Meetings of the Fargo City Commission in this hallowed chamber are the most visible public forum in the community and as the highest elected officials in the city, you serve as the guardians and the stewards of democracy as you represent not only those who have voted for you, but the majority, the minority, and the marginalized citizens of Fargo. Tonight, you're going to vote on a proposed public comment policy that provides opportunities for open comments and those focused on the agenda. Embracing public comment promotes the First Amendment rights of citizens while encouraging the transparency, accountability, public participation that is all central to a government of, by, and for the people of Fargo. Tonight, you have the opportunity not only to uphold the time-honored American tradition of town hall freedom of expression, but also to expand opportunities for citizen participation in democracy. This will not just be a policy for meeting governance. Public comment is an incredibly powerful tool if you're willing to embrace it and use it to its fullest extent. By embracing the voice of the people, you can continue to build a city where the lofty ideals of American freedom can ring. A city where civil rights and individual rights and liberties can be guaranteed and enjoyed by everyone, from the lifelong residents to the new Americans to the LGBTQ plus citizens, to young and old alike, all races and creeds, liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Neris Abutha. Neris Abutha. Sada Awis. Sadeh Awis. Hababi Mbasoni.
You said no. We stood in front of you, asking you to value our opinions, to value the lives of innocent children, and you looked us in the eye without a single shred of remorse and said no. We offered peace and watched you make a mockery of us from those very seats when you told us that you value the feelings of a few white threatened citizens who never bothered to show up, mind you, over a whole community of different races, genders, and religions. You said that passing this resolution would be divisive, yet you had no problem assembling a barrier between us, much like the one between Palestine and the rest of the world. And the worst part of it all is that you get to go on with your lives like nothing happened. You spoke to us individually, heard all of our stories, got a glimpse of the pain and anger we are drowning in, and chose to hold our heads under the water. But you had to have known. You had to have known that the people who showed up every day in this room, on the streets, wearing their keffiyehs like a badge of honor, fighting for a cause much bigger and much more important than anything else you discuss in this room, will never stop. So you can change your policies, take away public comments, but that won't stop us from showing up, from speaking up. Because your no doesn't mean no, not yet. What you seem to not understand is that your silence only makes us stronger. So be silent. Hide behind your titles. Let the masters lead the narrative and string its puppets along, but we will never stop. Not now, not in a year, not until the people we are fighting for stop dying.
Michael Wiles. Michael Wiles. Andrew Nelson.
My name is Andrew Nelson, and I've been a resident of Fargo for most of the last 20 years, as well as a taxpayer. In less than 7 months, Israel has killed more than 34,000 Palestinians, most of them women and children. According to UNICEF, the United Nations Children's Fund, more than 13,000 children have been killed in Gaza, with thousands more orphaned and wounded. That's one dead child for every Hamas militant Israel says they've killed since October 7th. Is that 1-to-1 ratio something you can dismiss with a clear conscience? On top of that, the UN organization UN Women says, on average, 2 mothers have been killed each hour in Gaza since the start of the war. The Associated Press reports that 60% of all buildings in Gaza, including homes and 90% of schools, are damaged or destroyed outright, with only 10 hospitals out of 36 still operational. Under international humanitarian law, if an attack fails to discriminate between combatants and civilians, or would be expected to cause disproportionate harm to the civilian population compared to the military gain, it's prohibited. Let me restate that, not counting those yet to be found under the rubble, almost 2/3 of the dead are women and children. How disproportionate must this harm be to merit our concern? Many Fargo residents without friends or family in that part of the world may be tempted to disregard this as someone else's faraway problem. But on Wednesday, the New York Times reported that President Biden signed another package to provide an additional $15 billion in military aid to Israel, a country with universal health care. As Americans, we don't even have universal health care. As Fargo residents, we're complicit in this war as our tax dollars are being used to fund the slaughter of civilians in the Gaza Strip, one of the most densely populated areas in the world. Israelis and Palestinians both deserve to live in peace. I would ask the people before me that they reconsider the ceasefire resolution adopted by the Fargo Human Rights Commission. We should not be funding military campaigns against women and children. Thank you.
Seda Awis.
Hello, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. What does it mean to be truly powerless? The people in Gaza living under tents are powerless. powerless to the bombs that don't seem to rest, powerless in the negotiations about them and their lives. The people in Khartoum, Sudan, are powerless, powerless to the armies that are at their door, funded by Western powers. The people in the West Bank are powerless, powerless against raids and constant military surveillance. The people sitting in these commissioner seats, sitting here, are not powerless. The hypocrisy of claiming to have no choice while actively standing against and blocking progression is not lost on me. The hypocrisy of claiming to be sympathetic for our cause but refusing to do anything about it is not lost on us. The powerless do not actively silence. Why is it suddenly, when we're talking about how to deal with protesters, the ideas flow like water? But when we are talking about the masakin, the powerless, it's crickets. Minds become deserts. Hands suddenly are tied. Tell me, are these the thoughts and actions of the powerless? No, the powerless think of food and water and safety, and the powerful think of control. I stand here today to speak up for the powerless and be a witness against the complicit powerful. Vote for a ceasefire without watering it down. Thank you.
Allison Slavic.
It's been 205 days since October 7th. Can you imagine being under attack, running for cover, and living in a tarp tent for 205 days? I can't even fathom the level of trauma those children have been victim to, losing their friends, their family, their homes, their hope. Since you voted down the resolution on April 1st, more than 1,000 Palestinians have been murdered, 2,000 injured, and at least 21 more healthcare facilities destroyed. While you were voting down the resolution on April 1st, 7 aid workers with World Central Kitchen were targeted and killed by not 1, not 2, but 3 guided missiles after properly communicating with the Israeli military about their plans to travel through a de-escalated zone to deliver much-needed food to the people starving in Gaza. The Israeli military targeted and struck all 3 vehicles in 3 consecutive airstrikes, then tried to play it off as an accident, which is simply untrue when they have the most sophisticated military equipment in the world, and the aid truck had their logos clearly marked on top of their vehicles. On April 7th, a playground that is frequently visited by displaced children in Gaza was bombed. A playground was bombed, killing 11 children. One eyewitness described the situation as a horrific scene of children torn apart. The latest data from UNICEF said that 1 child in Gaza is killed or injured every 10 minutes, and further said that at least 70 children are injured every day during the Israeli bombardment. Since this meeting started at 5 p.m., at least 1 child has died in Gaza, and during just one 2-hour city commission, 12 children, on average, have died during one city commission meeting. In latest news, a premature Palestinian baby was rescued from her mother's womb via C-section after her mother was killed in an airstrike. Baby Sabrine was first a miracle baby, but she died just days later from her injuries. Her parents and her older sister were killed in the airstrike. Her uncle was quoted, "My brother's family is completely wiped out. It's been deleted from the civil registry. There is no trace of them left behind." Baby Sabrine is among the more than 14,000 children who have been killed in Israel attacks since October 7th. For reference, the Fargo Public School System has just over 11,300 kids in pre-K through 12th grade. More children than there are in the Fargo Public School System. And now we are hearing news of multiple mass graves being uncovered at Nasser Hospital and Al-Shifa Hospital. Among the 400 plus bodies were executed children and doctors with their hands bound. There were remains of patients with catheters still in them. Some of the bodies were torn into pieces without heads or limbs. Some bodies suggest that they may have been buried alive. This needs to stop. You can still call for a ceasefire. Please work with the Human Rights Commission and do something.
Tracy Welke. Tracy Welke. We'll close resident comments. We'll go to public business. Item 34, public hearing, application for a Class C alcoholic beverage license for AKC Hoff Company doing business as Good Times at NP to be located at 623 NP Avenue. Steve Sprague to explain.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Before you tonight is a Class C alcoholic beverage license, which is a beer only, does not require food sales, and it does allow a physical bar. The business concept for Good Times is mocktails and comedy club. He plans on having like an open mic night local entertainment, those types of things. Through the background check, there were some issues that were discovered, some items, but they were rather dated. And so it did come to liquor control and was voted with a unanimous vote to recommend issuance of the license.
Is there anyone present who wishes to speak regarding this application? Is there anyone present who wishes to speak? If not, I'll close public hearing. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I have just a
Commissioner
question.
Preston?
So Steve, I noticed that there was no recommendation made by the police department.
I believe there was. Chief is here.
It's not marked on the form, so.
Were you not? Did it not go by your desk or? Fred, I don't have it with me, the copy. The chief doesn't have a copy either. But I believe the chief made a recommendation of approval. So maybe it was just marked someplace else on the sheet?
I couldn't find it anywhere, but
Okay.
It's approval recommended on my sheet. It says your signature, Chief.
Yep, I remember seeing it, so I don't just recall where exactly it was.
It's received by Travis Sanawanowitz on March 28, 2024, and then on your front sheet, it says you approved.
So it's on the front sheet, not on his stamp. Okay, yeah.
it. Oh, there, okay.
Any other comments or questions? Roll call vote, please.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Colpack?
Aye.
Preston?
Aye.
Strand?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Aye. Thank you, Steve. Public hearing, Erkson's addition. Approval recommended by Planning Commission on 4/2/24, a zoning change from multi-dwelling residential and single-dwelling residential to public and institutional. First reading of the rezoning ordinance. Donald Crest to explain.
Good evening, Commissioners. Donald Kress with the Department of Planning and Development. I'll be presenting this item, which includes an ordinance prepared by the City Attorney's Office. Item 35, as the mayor has stated, is Erskine's addition, a zone change. The property is located here on the corner of 10th Street and 10th Avenue South. I'm sure you've all been by this very distinctive-looking church building here that's been there for many years. The proposed zone change is from 2 residential zones to a public and institutional zone, PI. We've done this for different churches before. The subject property, again, looks like this. A few different views of it here as of this morning. The current zoning again here is MR2, multi-dwelling residential, and SR3, single-dwelling residential, and the proposed zoning is PI. The applicant is pursuing a zone change in order to be able to put a larger sign for their church than would normally be allowed by the residential zones. And again, we've done this a few different times for different churches. The case planner, Luke Mormon, noted that 5 inquiries were received on this property, which staff responded to. There was no opposition to this project, including we did contact to talk directly with Hawthorne neighborhood representatives. The applicant, Pastor Stephen Appel of Relevant Life Church, is with us tonight and may wish to address the commission. The Planning Commission's recommendation is stated in the staff report and shown on your screen. That concludes staff's presentation. Thank you, Commissioners.
Is anyone present who wishes to speak to us regarding the zoning change? Is anyone wishing to speak? If not, I'll close the public hearing. Do I have a motion?
Move the recommended motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Preston?
Aye.
Colpack?
Aye.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Strand?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, Donald. Public hearing, annexation filed by Next Senior for payment in lieu of tax exemption to be located at 1728 42nd Street South, in which the application will use primary 40 units of affordable senior housing. Jim Gilmore to explain.
Thank you. This is a proposed senior housing project that would be out in the West Acres area. This map shows the location. Delta Marriott is here. This is a vacant lot. Surprisingly, this has been vacant since the 1970s. I don't think there's ever anything built on it. Anyway, it would be a 40-unit senior housing project. I think I have some images of it here. This is a site plan. It would be a 4-story building. There would be parking on the ground level. and then apartments, 3 stories of apartments above. Would include a community room. The request is for a 17-year zero property taxes except on the land. This is similar to other projects where you've approved property tax exemptions, including Lashkowitz, the Milton Earl Beyond Shelter, the Prairie Project out near the jail, and probably several others in town. The recommendation is from the the Economic Development Incentives Committee is for approval. We went through the application also with the North Dakota Housing Finance Agency. The vote of the committee was 4-1. There was some concern about the overall cost of it, but North Dakota Housing Finance Agency said the soft costs were in line with what other projects, we've seen in Fargo from both for-profit and nonprofit developers. This has yet to be reviewed by the county and West Fargo schools. They wanted to get your decision first prior to taking any action on it. And I have on the line Tyler Sheehan from Commonwealth Development. Tyler, do you want to talk a little bit more about the application? But probably the thing to stress here is that if they had to pay the full property taxes, it'd probably add $150 a month to each apartment. It just wouldn't be an affordable project. So, Tyler? You there?
Tyler, can you hear us?
We've been having some technical difficulties tonight.
Jim, can I just have maybe if public wanted to comment right now until he gets on?
Yeah, go ahead.
Any of the public who wants to address this application? Anybody from the public who wants to address this application? I won't quite close it because you say he might come on.
Yeah, okay.
Katie, did we resolve?
The virtual imaging wasn't working tonight, so they're trying to conference call them in.
Any commissioners have any questions? Commissioner Pipcord.
So, Mr. Chair, I'll just kind of review, you were at the meeting as well. There were questions from some of the members of our committee about the cost. It's significantly more than the average developer would pay, but they basically explained that there's much more regulation and red tape, unfortunately, with this type of low-income housing. And so it's a great location, but from the perspective of the city, it should actually be lower to develop low-income housing is what we'd hope. So it's what the federal government, the red tape basically, and so it's disappointing, but that's the explanation, that the reason that there's higher costs is there's additional hoops you have to jump through because of it being that way. And so I don't know if that summarizes it, if you would agree with that, Mayor, but that was kind of the discussion. Some of our members basically questioned, they're in development and that's quite a bit more than the average housing development. So I don't know if that makes sense, Jim, if you would agree with that.
Probably what I'd add to that is the higher cost is in the soft cost. The cost of construction, hiring a contractor to build it, is a little bit more because you have this universal design that goes into it. It probably adds some cost, but a lot of the costs are the legal costs to set up syndication groups to sell the property tax credits. There's HUD funds in here, so there's Davis-Bacon wage rates, so the workers are paid more than other projects, and a lot more monitoring from the state as well as the investors in this. So,
I think we'll go ahead. Do I have a motion? Or Dave, you did do a motion. Did I have a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded. Any further discussion? Commissioner Strand.
Thank you, Mayor. Jim, I left my packet on my desk, so bear with me if I ask a really stupid question.
Okay.
And I had a note to ask this, and I believe this is the topic. Is this the same owners as the Artist Edge Flats?
It is.
Okay,
Same
and help me remember. I remember a while back where the property next to Artist Edge Flats was going to be developed into additional housing, and now that's being turned into a concert venue, potentially?
It's the same site, yes.
Okay, and help me continue further. Artist Edge Flats, that ownership has changed. Wasn't it the Kilborn Group originally, or their partnerships that developed that?
The Kilborn Group had originally owned both sites, and Commonwealth had purchased the first site from Kilborn. I don't know if they were involved at all in the construction of it or not. The second site was, Commonwealth had an option on that. Initially, they applied to the state. The county wasn't participating in the property tax exemption. They got a lower score and they were not funded. The next year they were funded. It was a COVID year. They couldn't get the rest of the financing and the costs were going up high, and they turned those low-income housing tax credits back. And so that project didn't go forward either.
And bear with me, Mayor, is this a 9% or a 4% LIHTC project?
This is a 9% LIHTC. There's also home block grant funds and I believe housing trust fund funds in it.
So my last and final question is, in light of some of these projects I've seen, how do we know and when do we know that they seem to get developed and sometimes often maybe sell? Is there any criteria affecting the ownership shifts or changes after you get a project, after you get developed, after we approve it, that then it goes out into the market and sells?
There's a requirement that the rents stay affordable for a 30-year period. So generally it stays in that same ownership for at least the first 15 years when the tax credits are done. It may be sold to someone else, but there's a lien on the property that requires any new owner to also comply with the property. The other is the North Dakota State or the North Dakota Housing Finance Agency. They do the underwriting on these and look at, is the amount of assistance appropriate, because it is a competitive process. And so really for us is, do we want the 40 units of elderly housing, which we desperately need, or do we not want it?
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Preston?
Aye.
Kolpak?
Aye.
Strand?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Yes. Item 37, recommendation to adopt resolution and memorandum of understanding with the Fargo Housing and Redevelopment Authority to provide TIF funds for the Lashquist Housing Project. Jim Gilmore also to explain. You're up here for quite a bit, Jim.
Yes. This is just a follow-up of what I had presented at the last meeting as I went through the Riverfront TIF. I won't do that again unless you want to see that again. But this would provide some architectural improvements to Lashquist, as well as requiring the housing authority to put washers and dryers in every unit really to make it more livable, I think. And so the recommendation is to provide the $536,000, for that. The rest of the Riverfront TIF we talked about, we're going to have a brown bag or other meeting soon to discuss those needs. Probably the only update from what I provided you last week or 2 weeks ago was that there's been an additional 8,900 in TIF funds received, and so there's some money, still more money left for Civic Plaza improvements or other things that you'd want to do if in the 2025 budget. So my recommendation is to approve that change.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second it, and then I have a question.
Commissioner Preston?
So I, by all means, support this project, but I would really like to see a long-term plan for this TIF district. And I know we've talked about having a brown bag. Is that coming up, or?
I guess I'll have to talk to Kember and city administration to see if they've scheduled anything yet. But I think that's important because there's a lot of choices for you as a city commission to make. What are the high priorities? How soon do we do with option A and option B? But I hope that can come up relatively soon.
Okay, so we're in the process.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other discussion? That's going to start construction this spring or fall?
Yeah, they've already been issued the building permits, so I think they're going soon.
Chris is doing the work he's supposed to?
Looking at closing January.
I can almost hear you, but it's nice the other people in the audience and the TV can hear you too, Chris.
I'll just speak a little louder next
Yeah,
time so everyone can hear
that's
me.
okay.
No, commissioners, we're looking at doing our final closing with all our with our finance stack, with our developers and all our investors on June 1st. We're actually having a pre-con tomorrow with our contractors, and we hope to be out there June 2nd to start digging.
Very good. Any other questions? Roll call vote, please.
Strand,
Yes.
Preston,
Yes.
Colpack,
Aye.
Pepcorn,
Aye.
Mahoney,
Aye. Jim Gilmore again, item 38. Update on the City Parker FM Theater in the Avery Building.
Thank you. Susan will be joining me to talk about some of the financing. First of all, just wanted to kind of give some background on this one. This is actually an article from 62 years ago. The buildings were demolished and the surface parking opened. And so hopefully what we'll see instead is this project here in the fall of 2026. This shows the kind of the front of the building. The Fargo Moorhead Community Theater entrance will be here. The parking garage entrance will be on this east side, and then the entrance to the apartments that are above will be here. This shows the layout of the plan. We're kind of, we're squeezing a lot onto a site. We're about a 465 car parking garage, community theater with about right around 400 seats, I believe, will be part of the project. This is the entry, and this green area is the entry for the apartments. They'll have their own elevator and entrance, and then the parking entrance is over here. There'll be space for a small retail business on the. Also, as part of this overall development, the Herbst building that's now vacant will be redeveloped, and then we've been really appreciated the cooperation from NDSU and the Renaissance Hall, accommodating this next door construction. This is the timeline of this. You may recall that you approved this agreement on November 14th, 2022. The surface parking lot will be closed as of after tomorrow, and we're scheduling a groundbreaking for May 1 on Wednesday. Also this month, engineering will begin reconstructing 8th Street from Main Avenue to the intersection with the fire hall. So that portion of the project is underway, and that should be done by fall. Then next year, Global Development plans to begin work in the spring on the Herbst building. In May, reconstruction of NP Avenue would begin, so we have new street in front of that. And then in July and August, we would have the completion of the parking garage. The Fargo Moorhead Community Theater building shell would be completed and transferred to the theater. They're bringing in another contractor for that more detailed fit up of the community theater, as well as the NP would be open. By August and fall of 2026, the Avery Apartments would be completed, the community theater would be completed, and then Global Development is converting the Herbst building into a hotel with main floor commercial space. Overall, this is over a $70 million investment in the downtown. Susan, you want to kind of cover the motions on the financing?
Yes. Hello, Commissioners. As Jim mentioned, the developer agreement was approved in November of 2022, so I thought you might like a refresher and maybe an update on what the financing plans are. Those were approved. The funding plans were approved at the same time as the development agreement. So the City of Fargo is going to be issuing appropriation bonds for 16 of the $20 million commitment. Currently, Baker Tilly is working to select a placement agent to market the bonds, and then as soon as we have those bids back, I'll bring those forward with a suggested awardee for your approval. The second component of that is that the remaining construction cash is going to be provided through a City of Fargo interfund loan of some excess cash within a debt service fund. So as I was doing a little more research on that, there's a few housekeeping things that we need to do in order to move ahead with that. Because it's coming from a debt service fund, we had to work with our bond counsel to make sure that we're not stepping outside of the rules. So she said that we should move the policy to actually be codified in adoption of an enabling ordinance, which is just a small paragraph that says that you're allowing us to do that. So that is up there. We're not asking for that today. This will be the first reading. And then the second item is that I was looking at the interfund policy that I mentioned, and it's pretty outdated. It refers to some processes we don't do, and it's very, very specific. So I have rewritten some new language that's our current processes and allows some flexibility. Again, I'm not asking for a motion on at this time. I think we can bring them all together in 4 weeks, but that is the plan. Thanks.
But it says receive and file ordinance section.
Correct. Receive and file both of them, and we'll come back with the second reading of the ordinance in the next meeting, and then we'll approve it in 4 weeks.
Okay,
and
do
we
I have
can
a
do that.
motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Preston?
I have some questions. Whether we do that before or after the motion?
You do it after. Could do it before, I guess, I don't know.
So Susan, can you, and I know that what you're asking for here is broader than just this project, but can you explain the difference between the appropriation bonds and the a revenue bond in regards to the source and the interest rates, and why are we doing an appropriations bond here?
And a revenue bond is more if there is, like you're building a bridge and you're going to charge for the bridge and you have that specific monies. In this case, I guess we are charging for the parking. I think in this case, it's because we had to structure the debt a little differently. The TIF monies, don't come in for a few years. So we're working with the bonds, and that's why we're doing, working with the bond agent, because we'll do interest only for a few years, so that when the TIFs kick in, we pay more of the principal. It'll be like interest only for a few years. So in order to do that, you need to do the appropriations, because then it has the backing of the annual appropriation.
If I can continue. So what's the interest rate different? Is there? I'm assuming one is a little more assured.
Well, the appropriation bond is actually probably more assured. I'm
Okay.
sorry, I've only done a couple of these since I've been here, so I'm not exactly sure. The GO is the lowest, which this is not, and then I think it's the appropriation, and then I think it's the revenue bonds.
Okay. So can you explain the debt repayment? Where's that coming from?
Well, I've spent a lot of time on this. This kind of predated me, so I kind of inherited it when I started. So I've done some research on kind of the parking fund and cash flows. That's actually something I'd like us to visit with in more detail when we have a parking brown bag. And I did verify that that is getting set up for tentatively May 17th. So that will be before I ask you to approve this, so we can have a little more detail on that. But I've looked through, and with the parking revenues and the TIF monies, and then the related ROCO and mercantile debt service, that's how this will get paid for.
If you'll indulge me, one more. So what, and whether that happens on May 17th or not, it would be really nice to see revenue in, expenses out on this parking ramp, and figure out where the revenue is coming from and where it's going to, and how that debt is going to get repaid.
Yes.
Almost a pro forma of sorts.
Yep, that's actually what I've put together, is kind
Okay.
of the next many years of that.
Okay.
Yes, Strand.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just curious, for my sake, help me understand examples of debt service funds. I want to say like the Red Hawks or Convention and Visitors Bureau. That's what my head is saying. Could you tell me some examples of debt service fund projects we've done this like with?
Well, the most common debt service ones are the RIBs, the refunding improvement bonds. So as we work on special assessments and assess those out to payees, we sometimes have early payers, or there's maybe a margin with the interest rate. So cash accumulates in those funds. And we can't use that cash for anything. We can't pull it out and use it as revenue because it's tied to those bonds. But the bond attorney said it's appropriate to borrow against it. So basically, we're using our own cash and we're financing it with our own money, is how that's working.
Have we done this for other similar type projects?
We have not done the debt service fund, but we've used other funds. So for example, we'll use some money from an enterprise fund or the general fund to fund, I think I listed a couple examples that I could see, Newman Outdoor Field, some parking repairs, and some neighborhood revitalizations are the ones that we looked at, but those were not debt service fund. That's why this is a little different.
Any other comments or questions? Commissioner Preston?
Could you send a copy of, I think you had referred to a policy, a finance policy that doesn't allow the debt or the funds where you'll be transferring dollars from, that it won't drop it to a certain level. Could you send a copy of that policy to us I'm curious as to what it says.
We don't.
I'm not sure, exactly sure which one you mean.
Okay.
It's current policy.
Under guidelines established by the interfund loan policy. It's on the third paragraph of your memo. I can email you too.
Sorry, thank you.
Any other, Commissioner Strand?
Thank you, Mayor. You know, on one hand, I just am delighted. I think the community should be delighted this project's moving forward. Since 2022, we've seen other projects fall apart and come unglued and not happen. So with the change in the economy and the costs and everything, it's just gratifying to see these investors, see them stepping forward. Months ago, I asked for this parking study report for us because there's also people in the community who say you shouldn't be funding parking lots, parking ramps. I mean, there's that sentiment out there that enough of these parking ramps. And so on one hand, we have us investing in parking ramps. On the other hand, we have a project that's really exciting to see come forward. And real frankly, nobody else seemed to want that property. But I wish we'd have had this parking study review before we're asked to vote on this, so I could just see that bigger picture, because there's elements of it I'm just missing. And I think it would be good for the public to see us put this into the context of the overall bigger picture for downtown and for parking. So I'm kind of torn. I'm ecstatic this project's moving forward. I just wish I'd had that other information earlier.
But what she's saying, this is first reading, so she'll have the parking study May 18th. And then
I'm not sure,
it'll
that's
come
the
back
exact
with-
same one you're talking about.
May 17th. yeah.
Is that the parking study or
Yes.
like a financial study, or were you looking at
Well,
more
it's
broadly?
just to help us see the bigger picture. How many ramps do we have? Who owns them? What are the funding mechanisms? What are the long-term commitments to them? I just don't know all of that. And that's what I've been asking for several months.
I think the planning department's been working on that, and we'll have interstate parking here to talk about, who owns what the debt is, how the operations work, as well as the most recent parking study for the downtown.
So can I move forward with a motion, please?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Which motion?
This is suggested motion number 1, please. Again, this isn't the final one. This is just for them to proceed and come back to a second reading. Can I have a second, please? I mean, Susan's worked hard at this, and this is something she's come up with. I think we need to support our financial director.
I'll second it.
Further discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Preston?
I guess in my mind too, it's an issue of timing. And I would sure like to understand the bigger picture first.
And I think we're offering that May 17th, in
Right.
which you'll see all the
Yeah.
picture of the parking stuff.
And I
So I think we
realize
feel
this
more
is-
comfortable with the proposal. and the
I
next
realize
meeting.
this is the first step, but yeah, I mean, is there some reason that it needs to be before May 17th?
Well, it's a 4-week process, so this would just get the ball moving, the first read and then second reading, and you won't be asked to approve it until 4 weeks, but if you want to defer it, we certainly can.
Commissioner Strand?
Thank you. And yet, there's a grand opening on May 1st? A ribbon cutting?
The groundbreaking.
Groundbreaking, so we'd be groundbreaking for something we haven't finally acted on.
We've made the commitment, John.
The commitment was
In
made
previous
with the
actions of this
developer.
commissioner.
The commitment was made with the developer agreement in November of 2022. And my understanding is the outs were if the developer couldn't meet their agreements, and they did. So we're moving ahead, and that was my directive, was to find a way to fund this. So that's what we did.
So what she's doing is cleaning up our ordinances, correcting them on our interfund transfers, which is perfectly legal, and we made a commitment to the organizations to move this forward. We could go through our bond bag, and then we still have to come up with our commitment. Commissioner Strand?
I'd be concerned. I don't know where everybody lands on this. Given our uncertainties, I'd hate to have us move forward and vote this down right now, or not. At a minimum, I'd rather have us put this on the back burner till we get the information Commissioner Preston and others are asking for. Is there a harm in this happening after the May 7th deadline, or?
It's a timing, John. If we do this, there's no action that comes out of this. The second reading comes, you have perfect right to vote against it the time it comes back. To table it
Brian,
would
can you
delay
hear
the
me?
ability.
Yes,
So what
Eric.
we need to do is move forward.
Eric's on the line.
I think we have
Eric?
Eric on the line now.
Who's this?
Eric Johnson.
Eric?
Yes. Hey, Mayor and Commissioners. Yeah, just to clarify something, I wasn't sure if you could hear me or not, but this is actually receiving and filing of the ordinance. So it's even one step removed from first reading. So you're just receiving and filing the ordinance so that you can then do first reading in 2 weeks and second reading and final passage 2 weeks after that.
That clarified enough, Commissioner Stride?
Whose portfolio is this?
Finance?
Is this a finance portfolio?
I presume, my portfolio.
Well, it'd be it's a combination. I mean, so, Jim Gilmore, of course, the strategic planning and research director, works on these kind of development agreements, and as do I. And ultimately, as was explained, the commission approved the developer agreement, including the financing. There was a contingency that we've since passed on that we would be allowed to be able to get the financing in place, and that's been committed to. So, as said, we've basically closed the transaction, and this is just more some housekeeping issues in order to solidify the ability to do the interfund loan, which has been part of the program in place for, I think, at least a couple of years now.
Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Kolpak?
Aye.
Strand?
Yes.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Preston?
Aye.
Mahoney?
Aye. Second motion is to remove and receive and file proposed revised interloan policy for consideration for future city commission meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, if I could just ask, the purpose of this particular motion, can somebody explain it to me?
Susan?
Doing my research, I looked at the existing policy. It was dated 2019, so there were some outdated terms in there, particularly the reference to the Finance Committee and different limits. There was also some very specific interest that was identified. I made this so that it was more flexible, so you as a commission can determine that.
So the first is the ordinance and the second is the policy.
The policy, correct.
Okay.
Mr. Pepcorn?
So, Mr. Chair, what this reveals is, so to give you an example, the Fargo Dome, we have a monthly finance committee meeting. The Diversion Authority, we have a monthly finance committee meeting. Now, we don't even have a finance committee for the city of Fargo. The Fargo Dome is 1% of the Fargo's budget, and they have a monthly meeting. And now we don't even have one.
Any other comments? Roll call vote, please.
Kolpak?
Aye.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Preston?
Aye.
Strand?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Aye. Any other business on that, or are we okay? Okay. Updated the overnight winter weather initiative at the Engagement Center. Brenda Derrick to explain.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Tonight, I'd like to provide an update you with the preliminary update on our winter weather initiative. So one of the allocated ARPA fund projects approved by the City Commission was the Winter Warming Initiative. This provided temporary overflow plan for those experiencing homelessness during the winter months. This approach allowed for the city's response to be proactive rather than reactive in sheltering the most vulnerable in the community in order to prevent cold weather-related injury or death. As planned, the Winter Warming Initiative will close operations after the night of April 30th. Staff are doing everything they can to divert individuals to other facilities and places to stay. With that, the metro area is still seeing our shelters at capacity along with limited housing availability. The winter warming opened last November 15th. Since the opening until April 25th, we had 8,096 encounters, which included our community room and lobby. There were 698 unique individuals, 233 that were new to City of Fargo services, and we had 86 successful diversions. A successful diversion is that we were able to get them to a shelter, hotel, family, friend, or safe place that did not include detox facility, jail, or hospital. Some of the statistics on the length of stay, our average length of stay was for 8 nights. You can see from the 1 to 10 nights, that took over about half. The majority of people were spending from 1 night to 10 nights, and then it drops dramatically. And you get less than 5%, and then again, even at that, as the days extend, that percentage even goes down further. You'll see from our preliminary final budget report, we used the ARPA funds along with a FEP workforce grant that Public Health received. This grant had to be spent by the end of May, so you'll see some flip-flopping on the numbers. So the FEP grant actually got increased in our actual amount, and we only spent approximately $50,000 of the $152,000 that was allocated to go to winter warming from the ARPA funds. So what's next? We will be working on a full report for the Winter Warming Center and initiative along with final costs. We are also scheduling James Matthew to return to meet with our City Commission and provide a report from his visit along with next steps. We are also implementing a neighborhood outreach team that will focus on the downtown area. They will have a soft opening starting on Wednesday, and as they coach and train their staff, and they'll also be reaching out to businesses and residents downtown to help build their relationships. And that concludes my update, and thank you for your time.
Any questions? Commissioner Strand?
Thank you, Brenda. This is really terrific news and a reflection of our community that we should all be incredibly proud of. Next year, do we have to reinvent this again, or are we going to be in place to have, because I don't remember a winter warming space in the past, and what a great addition to the localized services. Is this going to be going forward an option on our plates always?
So that's the hope with the final report, is we'll have operational procedures and what worked and what didn't work. So that's what we're going through right now, is we're surveying everyone, seeing what worked, what didn't work, and come out with some best practices if this is something that the leadership chooses to continue.
Because the ARPA funds will be depleted, so we'll have to replenish them or reinvent how we fund it, I'm assuming?
Correct. We'll have to look at if this is something we'll want to budget.
The last thing I'll say is public health and our harm reduction people, our law enforcement people, all of our emergency providers. What a remarkable job to get through a winter like this. It's been a warmer winter, but the populations are extremely bigger than we've ever seen of affected people. To go through year after year and to not have deaths out there of people freezing to death. I don't even know how to quantify the success of that. And it needs to go back to our people in the trenches and the services they provide and the heart they do this with. So please pass that on, at least from one commissioner, the appreciation to them for what they do, to the impact on people's lives that's so significant. And these are all family members of somebody. So we're doing a great job. The country's watching Fargo. We're nonstop, always setting the bar for how others can learn from us. The Mobile Outreach Unit. Fargo is maybe the first community in the country to do this. Now everybody's got an emergency crisis response team. So anyway, I couldn't be more proud of our public health, our harm reduction, our law enforcement, our emergency response people, our administration, and our support of funding this and breathing life into protecting vulnerable people.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you. Item 40, recommendation to adopt resolution adopting governance policies of the Board of City Commissioners. I want to commend Nancy Morris because she just had surgery but came to this meeting because she loves this policy governance stuff that we've been working on. But you have that in our packet. I don't believe, Nancy, much has changed since our last meeting, but you wanted to address the commission.
Thank you. So what is presented for your consideration is the resolution that would adopt the policies that you have been working on for these past 10 months or so. It is similar to the resolution that you do on a biannual basis, because when a new commission is sworn in every 2 years, that resolution is presented to you with the pre-existing code of conduct and agenda rules. This now is a complete package of all of those policies that would be adopted.
I'm not aware of any commissioner doing any other amendments, so my presumption is what you have in your packet is where we're at. Any questions of Nancy? Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second it, and then I have a question.
Mr. Preston.
So the implementation of this, and that's more of a question, I guess, for us than for Nancy. Immediate? There are some items in here that's going to require some resources probably. I'm thinking the parliamentarian training, scheduling that in. There might be a few other pieces that will require some kind of implementation plan.
Kimber's really excited about our parliamentarian training, so she's happy to do that. Mike Redinger will address the other issues, but anticipation is our next meeting will be going by this policy.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Good evening. So implementation, Commissioner Preston, it's a great question. There are some elements of this that will have immediate effect and impact. One is the format of the commission meeting. We're going to be meeting as a staff internally to talk about the revision to the public comment period and what that will look like, how that will function. There are other elements of the governance policies that admittedly will take time, especially against the backdrop of starting the 2025 budget. If you look at calendars here for the entire month of May, we're pretty much locked up now with all of our budget meetings and calendars. So what I would like to do is try to take this in pieces and reporting back to the commission as we are implementing chapters of the governance policies, if you will. And so that we will provide regular reports on that. And I think the ideal would be by July 1, we would have all things checked on these boxes. But there is a lot of work here. There are a lot of elements here. And I don't want to rush that. I would much rather measure twice and cut once on that so that we get it right and we get it right the first time. And so we will be spending quite a bit of time on that.
But Mike, is it fair to say, as far as for the public to understand, our public comment period, our agenda comment discussion will be a change to our next meeting?
Correct, in May, your first meeting in May.
So
That is
just the
correct.
public would understand that so they know when to sign up and when they're expected to speak. Because for the public, the resident comments will be at the end of the meeting, not at the beginning of the meeting. You will be allowed to speak before agenda items on any agenda item, but it'll be a change. So, Commissioner.
Just one other follow-up question then. It would be good, I think, to have an update on July 1st or right there somewheres to report back what has been completely implemented. I also think there's some internal things. We've talked about reviewing our effectiveness in this whole policy model. And I don't know that we've clarified how that's going to get done. So that might require some conversation in amongst the commission, it seems.
Mayor, Commissioners, and Commissioner Preston, I think that's a great observation. And what I might suggest as well is this other item that's related to this, the boards and commissions. There may be an opportunity to revisit all things implementation as well as the next steps on boards and commissions. Perhaps that's a good time at midsummer to talk about that as we get our budget process underway. And I think that'd be a great check-in opportunity.
So we're voting on first the policy. I had a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Commissioner
Yes, I have
Colfax.
just a couple comments, and thank you for clarifying that. I know that the communication team will be putting together a plan on how this will affect the public for future meetings. So that's coming. And then also we talked about an annual review of these as a commission. This was our first stab at putting this together, but we have to your point, Commissioner Preston, make sure that they're doing what we intended them to do.
I want to thank you all for your excellent work on this. Roll call vote, please.
Kolpeck?
Aye.
Preston?
Aye.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Strand?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Aye. The other discussion we have, Mike Redinger and myself were discussing your concerns on commission boards, commissions, and committees, and we suggested not using a consultant, but working with the commission. And I would suggest to you there's two elements or two ways of doing that. One, we can instruct staff to go back and work on it a bit. For instance, we no longer have parking commission. We no longer have community development. What will we do to officially either phase those out or do something with them? Or do we get together again with the the commission and the mayor and talk over what we think about doing with our commission and boards, similar to our retreat, but without a facilitator, just working with our staff. I'll let Mike talk about it a little bit different, but kind of want to know what the commission wants, because oftentimes all five of us have some input on this, and it's hard just to task one commissioner to figure out what everybody wants. It'd be better to have a frank discussion of the group. So Mr. Rediger has some suggestions.
Well, thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Just to note, there is no staff recommendation on this item, but simply just trying to revisit that conversation that we had on April 4 at session number 9 with Dr. Schatz. There were a couple of kind of clear takeaways there. One was that we could revisit boards and commissions at the staff level and then provide all of our input and feedback in a technical report back to the commission. Alternatively, we could have commissioners individually provide feedback about what works, what doesn't work, what we'd like to change with boards, commissions, and committees. We would compile that information and report back to the commission, or really alternatively, as the mayor was just suggesting, we could also think about gathering again for meeting number 10 without facilitation services, just to talk about goals and objectives there. We could do that at the beginning of the summer or midsummer and talk as a group all together at the same time about what that looks like. So again, no recommendation here, just simply following up on your recommendation that we talk about this at your last session earlier this month. So open to your thoughts and suggestions. We're happy to support wherever the commission would like to go with this.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Preston.
So I really believe strongly that these boards and commissioners, well, they're advisory to the commission. So we need to own these and understand how they supplement the decision-making process. So I would strongly suggest that at least setting out some framework for determining what's going to come from the staff level, which is what are we trying to accomplish with these? And where is it that we really need to seek out a broader public input process? So I would say it would be wise to have an initial meeting with all of us with some clear direction, and then staff can bring input from the staff level. And I know that these boards and commissions provide, and it seems to me, two different roles. One is bringing the public input into the structure. The other is providing support and/or feedback for the staff. So those two roles seems to require some conversation on both sides. But I would strongly suggest that we need to have some conversation about goals and objectives of what we're trying to do here.
Any other comments by commissioners? Commissioner Strand?
Thank you. As I'm looking at this, I think we do all of the above. You know, we start with us, however we do this, but I don't see a recognition or acknowledgement here of all the existing board commission members. And they have a lot of input for us if we seek it and solicit it. They have experience in the trenches. They know what it's like to be appointed to a board or commission. And they, I'm guessing, have an experience that's different than ours. So I'd want us to make sure we're including them in this too. And my sense is we crawl up into the balcony. Some of these boards and commissions shouldn't even exist anymore, probably. So if we can just start separating the wheat from the chaff and prioritize, and if you internally do it at staff administration level, then bring us, convene with us, and then make sure we're getting feedback from the constituents. And lastly, I always wonder, well, what do others do? How do other governments and subdivisions and cities and counties solicit public engagement and stuff? So there's a lot to learn. And lastly, a timeline. When we're going to try to wrap this all up by.
Would suggest that you take the suggestion, Mike, to have the staff work on it a little bit. I know we're working budget through May and June, so perhaps a July date would be realistic, that we then get back with the commissioners. And I think to some of the commissioners' recommendations, there's some boards we have to have by law. There's some boards that we have as a convenience for the city of Fargo. To Commissioner Strand's comment, we may want to look nationally, see how other people do it. Is there a better way, or is there other boards you may want or not want? And then perhaps we can get together in July. I think the mistake we made on the policy is we had a delay of getting that back to the board. But I think if we all, as a commission, agree we're going to get into this in July as far as the commission involvement, if that would be okay, that's how we'd proceed. As you said, no recommendation tonight, but perhaps the schedule would be that way.
Great.
Does that sound fair?
That sounds great. Thank you, commissioners.
Okay. You have my recommendations for appointments to the library. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? This is pretty easy. This one's pretty easy, guys. Come on. Roll call vote, please.
Kolpak?
Aye.
Preston?
Aye.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Strand?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Aye. I'm going to take discretion and just bring item number 5 in right now because we're going to have liaison assignments. Item number 5, Commissioner Preston, you want that brought forth?
Yeah, I just wanted to bring it onto the table just because I think it's a significant enough change. And I was a little confused by the implementation plan, and I thought if anybody from the public is actually looking at this and reading it, they would also be confused. So my main question was about the implementation and the grandfathering in and all of that. So if you could just run through that process.
Steve,
Sure.
before you start, just for the public, can you share with them what we're doing with item number 5, please?
Sure, thank you, Commissioner. This is a combination thing. It's something we've been working on at Liquor Control for some time and meeting as staff, probably going on a couple of years now. The intent here is to do background checks at renewal time on anybody, all of the owners, and a general manager at any of the facilities that have an alcoholic beverage license. So in order to get there, we needed to make some more ordinance changes, and part of that is what is presented here by Nancy. The implementation side of it, what we're going to do is renew all of our 210-ish liquor licenses for June 30th, and then start our quarterly process. So we're going to break it down. So we do about 50 to 55 liquor licenses per quarter. Now, we didn't want to go back and, if we have somebody that has been working with a business for, many, many years, as some of our managers have. We didn't want to be punitive to them and say, hey, this guy's got something in his deep past that we don't think he qualifies for a liquor license. And that's the point of the grandfathering. And so as of June 30th, that's going to kind of be that line in the sand. And so we're going to do our background checks from June 30th of 2024 and then move forward. So the first set of renewals that will come back up to you would be in September. So we do about 50 at that point, and then the police department would look at the background checks for those 50 licenses at that time. And then we would just continue forward as we move through the year. And after 1 year, everybody would be on a new renewal date. Instead of all 210 licenses renewing on June 30th, they would renew quarterly. Does that make sense?
Mr. Chairman.
Preston.
So what was confusing to me was the background checks not going back retroactively. So are you saying that on the first year, the only incidents that would be looked at is incidents that would happen within that year?
Correct. So and that makes it easier for the police department. They only have to go back 1 year and look at time. When you think about it, we have some liquor license holders that have passed their background check 40 years ago. And, we may not know of any incidents that might have happened during those years. But going forward now, if something happens, we'll be made aware of those incidents.
If I could do a follow-up. So the only issue that I could see in that is that if you get a new liquor license application, you're looking back way beyond 1 year. How do you rationalize that?
Well, with that new application, we are looking at it for the first time. In comparison, we have licensees again that have had their license. They've gone through that initial background check process. And so we're just saying that, if there was something that had happened years and years ago, we're not going to be punitive at this point.
Any other discussion or questions?
Yes, Mayor, please.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, John.
Thank you. I'm curious about where we go with this information. I recall some discussions about, for example, if you have a manager, an employee who had a previous felony. And I remember one prominent business owner, restaurant owner saying, well, it's kind of on our shoulders if we hire somebody we believe they're qualified and they're the best candidate and that they've turned their life around and that they're prepared for this. Where does this land? We're going to have background checks, but I'm not sure I'm understanding what that means. Where will we go with it? Will we cost people their ability to be managers, or will we just, help me understand that for starters, Steve.
Yeah, so we're separating now the owners from the managers. And so with the managers, again, we have that grandfather time where we're going to only look from June 30th forward of 2024. So if we have a manager change and we're within their year renewal cycle, they will have the opportunity to present that manager for the background check. And they can make it, if it's somebody that we wouldn't necessarily recommend, they can know that at that time. And it's my understanding, and I might need Nancy's help with this part, but we're not telling them that they can't hire them, but that they're aware of what their background might be. Did I get that right, Nancy? Maybe I'm.
Yeah, no, it's my understanding that it would be similar to if it was a new application that was being received, and the recommendation would come from the police chief as to whether or not that renewal or that license would be issued based on the.
What is it we're trying to cure? I think that's what we're really asking is liquor control. Commissioner Pickborn looked at this. What is it you were really trying to cure with this type of application process?
I think mostly just to have that annual background check done by the police department.
Commissioner Pickborn, any different?
No, I agree with Steve.
So what could happen is an owner could bring in somebody in that shouldn't be a manager. You wouldn't catch that now because you don't do yearly checks. What this is going to do is catch a manager who shouldn't really be in that position.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, Commissioner Strand.
That whole notion, though, of catching somebody, if we find out they've hired or want to hire somebody who had a previous felony, or does that mean we're disqualifying that employee from being a potential manager? Or I'm still not clear where the policy lands on this. And if I'm just not clear on it.
Yes, that would be accurate. Guidelines were adopted in February of 2018, which establishes all of the criteria for an individual to be an owner or a manager at the time of application. And so now this is slowly implementing that hadn't been done for a number of years. It was required at the time of the application. Instead of saying everybody's going to go back to the time of application, it's just a slow approach to how many general managers and how many owners will be background checked for how long.
I'm still not clear. Will that person not qualify if they have had a previous felony or not?
I think Chief's coming up here to make a
That's where
statement.
I remember one
Chief
business.
Zabowski, you have a comment.
Sorry.
I was waiting, but I think maybe I can help a little bit with this. The process will be very similar to what it is right now. We have a set of established criteria that would identify someone who we would find not to be suitable. What this process does is add the managers in, which we have no ability to do right now. And we have had issues with managers. We've got even a pending situation where we found out someone has felony cases, and there's no way for us to know without this background check. So the reason we're not going backward at the beginning is really kind of a due process grandfathering in. So we've had these established owners for a period of years. In discussions with the group, I think the idea is it would be difficult to go backwards and penalize someone who has had a license for a long time, but this is the start of a new process. And so going forward for that owner, and if owners change, then there'd be new owner. As the manager changes, they will get that background check as well. And with the process that's in place, they have the opportunity to submit that to us so that we can run the background and say, hey, this person is not someone we would recommend. If they still choose to hire them, then that's a licensing decision by the city. If they choose to hire them, we will meet with the Liquor Control Board, and if that's the case, I would not recommend that the license be issued. So in a sense, they are getting a heads up that this would be a poor decision, but we're not telling them what to do. However, if it's someone we wouldn't recommend, the recommendation would be not to issue the license, and of course, the Liquor Control Board would make that decision with an appeal to the commission. So there's plenty of process in place.
Commissioner Strand.
This is what I would ask the Liquor Control Board, is to talk this through a little more, especially in light of the one prominent restaurant owner who appealed to us to say, it's really our responsibility. But I just want to know that if there's a grievance or an appeal process or a way for them to still move forward and appeal their case and get our favor and vouch for their manager and say that. But I just don't want to see it so black and white that somebody who's had a previous felony is just immediately scarlet lettered.
100% understand, and that's not what we do now. So it would be the same process with this body as the appeal body.
Mr. Pepcorn.
So, Mr. Chair, once again, the Liquor Control Board is a subcommittee of this group. It will come to this group, and so then you're concerned you'll have plenty of opportunity to do what you're talking about.
Mr. Preston?
Let me just clarify, because I think I understand that if a felony happened within that current year, that is the only time that it would be considered. Am I understanding that correctly?
Well, I think what the question you asked earlier is when we have a new applicant,
Yes.
we will go back farther than 1 year.
With a
But
new applicant.
New applicants,
But
right.
with
Current ones,
these
because we're
renewals.
grandfathering, we're looking at current, basically, right? So going forward, so new manager, we would look back, but not new owners who are existing, because when they come up for their license issuance, if they've been the existing owner, we'll run, check, but we're not looking, if it's something before current time, we've agreed that we're not going to address that because we're grandfathering in going forward.
If I could just follow this just
Sure.
a little bit further. But this will be annual, so the felony would need to be new within that year,
Correct.
right?
Yes.
So we're not talking about going back, way back, and finding felonies in people's background. So
They'd stay with the bar, John.
Okay. I had thought I heard a 5-year window from one of our discussions, but I'm not hearing that today.
No,
Part of on our license recommendations, we have the guidelines, and so they would follow those guidelines. And some of those things are, I'm just trying to remember, but like a DUI in the last 2 years, or serving to a minor, things like that. So,
Mr. Chairman, if I could
Mr.
just.
Preston.
So the language is just kind of confusing. This is not an issue of appealing to the city commission, right? I mean.
Well, like any liquor license, it could be. So if someone applies for the liquor license and the manager or the new owner has, just like we do now when we review it, convictions or other contacts that would be unsuitable based on the current standards that are in the ordinance, then yes, liquor board could deny it. And if they wanted to appeal, they would come to the commission.
Let me just clarify again. It's just a legal term issue. It is truly not an appeal, right? I mean, the decision is made at the commission level. Am I understanding that correctly? So it's not really an appeal.
I would agree with that. If there is a recommendation from the Liquor Control Board, they could choose to withdraw their application if the recommendation was to deny.
Sure.
Or it could be placed on City Commission. City Commission is ultimately making the decision as to whether to issue that license or not. And I would say using the words grandfathered also means we're looking at this prospectively. So what has happened in the past isn't going to be a consideration. It's moving forward, whether or not that person would qualify for that license issuance.
I'm sorry, but one of the other questions I'd asked some months back was the types of felonies. A felony isn't always a felony. There's some really violent criminal felonies and there's some non-violent felonies. And are we differentiating felonies from each other? Because some felonies might really have an influence on who, and some might,
Yeah, no, I mean, we look at each one of them and I evaluate it and make a recommendation and discuss with the board if there's a question. Even in some of them, I think you had one earlier where we initially denied because there was some issue in the application and Steve did some follow-up and resolved that and we came back and issued the license. So I think that part works okay, but yes, everything, even the rest of the parameters, and I can't remember all of them, but there's an evaluation process there, and this is explained to the board in terms of whatever reasoning I put into a decision. And again, the board can do as they wish.
Any other discussion? We have a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Preston?
Aye.
Colpack?
Aye.
Strand?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Aye. Liaison Commissioner silent reports. Commissioner Pipcorn.
No update, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Preston.
Not for me either.
Commissioner Kolpak.
I have one slide today on the water utility. Fargo's water treatment plant is currently updating its main basin for softening drinking water, again for the region. And the rehab of that plant's primary apparatus for softening is now 100% complete. And rehab of 2 other similar apparatus is expected to be finished this year. Updates include new coating and new stainless steel parts to resist corrosion. It's being funded by a low-interest loan from the North Dakota State Revolving Fund.
I just want to commend the water department because the team always looks for those low interest loans and for the commission to know that those loans are sought at throughout the state. But our team does a great job about getting those loans and it helps us keep our costs down for utility. Commissioner Strand.
Thank you, Mayor. I only comment I'd like to make is I remember when I started public service years ago, somebody said it's going to be 95% tedium and 5% sheer terror. Commissioner Pepcorn and Mayor Mahoney and I are serving on the Diversion Authority Board. I just want the public to pay close attention to where we are. Give us your guidance. There's nothing, our flood protection project is so critical to our future, and it takes all of us to do the best we can. So anybody who has any feedback for us about how to do our best with the challenges we're facing at the Diversion Authority, I welcome it, at least as one of our 3 appointees to that board.
No other business? Take it, we're adjourned. Thank you.